All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Appreciate that nice intro, and welcome everyone to this really fun workshop. I'm Liz, the creative director here at the Crafter's Box. I have Candace here with me. We're so excited to bring this really, really fun technique to a larger audience. Today we're going to be carving on leather. This is a surface design class, something that I've been exploring just maybe over the past year and a half. This is a really fun craft because the way I kind of discovered it or tried it out was I have a love for leather. I went out and I bought a big half hide of this beautiful veg tan leather. And, I kind of discovered that there are parts of the hide that were pristine and perfect and ready to be crafted with. And then there were parts just naturally that had some imperfections, right? Some little scratches, some little scarring on the hide. And it's really a shame to throw any of that out or consider it seconds. Leather is a precious material to me. It's so durable. It's so beautiful. You can do so much with it that I decided to kind of take those imperfections and enhance them with some carving of the hide itself. So it's a super beautiful technique. It reminds me of the way when people wood craft, they will rusticate a piece of wood that is sound but has imperfections. They'll sandblast it to kind of give it a new texture and a new character. So I'm excited for you all to try it today. Let's talk a bit about our materials that you should have in front of you, or source this at a later time so that you can enjoy this technique on your own time. So go ahead, Lizzie, I'm gonna pull the camera down so you all can see what's in front of me. All right, so hopefully everyone can see. Just let me know if you need any adjusting, or we can tweak the camera angles. So here are the materials that I'm going to be using today. This looks like a lot. I won't be using all of these. You can choose to use some of these materials or not. I have really quickly some olive oil and a rag here. We'll be using this at the end. I have a pair of scissors. These are kitchen shears, which work really well for leather, but also on paper. I have a scratch awl. You don't have to have one of these. You can use really anything to scratch, a toothpick if you want. I have some masking tape. I have a number 2 pencil and a Sharpie. This is a leather burnisher. It has different size grooves for burnishing the edges of leather. Today I'll be using kind of this end. This is a really useful tool just for leather craft in general. And they're easy to find. And last but not least, you're gonna need some carving tools. So these are beautiful birch and steel carving tools. These are hand forged. We carry these here at the Crafter's Box for linoleum carving. And I had them in my house when I was trying out this technique on leather for the first time, and they work really, really beautifully. This one is kind of a larger U-shaped gouge. I don't know if you can see that. This isn't a V shape, this is a U shape, and it's really sturdy. I really love this tool. And this one is a V shape, but it's very small. I think this is 14 millimeter. These are beautiful tools. You can sharpen them over and over again and use them for life. I really love them. If you don't happen to have this beautiful set here, I have used the speedball tool in the past. It doesn't last quite as long as these steel versions here, but if you have this at home, give it a try. This is also used on carving rubber and linoleum. It can be used on leather. Give it a shot. If you have one, why not explore that tool a little bit more? So in addition to those tools, it's also great to have leather, right? We need leather to carve on. We have a few kits here at the Crafter's Box that I've tried this technique on. I'll just pull a few in. We have this awesome card wallet designed by Ellie Lum at Clumhouse. And you can see here, the kit comes with rivets. And I've carved here on this front panel. Something small like this would be great. This is the larger wallet. It comes with all the hardware, like I said. This is what it looks like at the end when it's put together. These are all a little bit heavier weight leather. They are 4 to 6 ounce or higher. This is a leather belt bag. This is in black here. This is the shape it is when it's flat before you assemble it. Any leather project that you have in front of you, or even scrap leather, you're definitely going to want to do this process before you assemble the bag. So before it's three-dimensional, you want your piece to be flat, and you want it to be pretty steady, pretty sturdy rather, 4 to 6 ounce weight leather or higher. And veg tan works perfectly for this. But I did want to just do a little overview of the different leather types, or just examples of what this process can look like depending on the leather you have in front of you. Let me adjust this camera because, all right. So taking a look at just different types of leather, these are all pretty thick leather. This is not. So I just, for a little demonstration, wanted to show you what this process how it might fail on a thinner leather. This is definitely a garment weight leather. And this process doesn't work well on something so light. And I'm just gonna mark it to show you why not. So see how the leather is puckering and it doesn't really create any kind of carving. It's just too thin. It's just pulling the leather down. So I would just definitely discourage using a leather that lightweight. A couple of things about the leather you have in front of you. It's good to turn it over and look at the side. So whatever leather you're dealing with, it has the top side and the bottom. This is called the grain. This is called the flesh. You can think of it as slick and rough if you want. But just a little bit about leather anatomy. The top layer here, the grain, has the most integrity. It's the thickest, it has the most structure to it. And as you move down the layer towards the rough side, the fibers get looser, they get less compact, and they have less structure. So just taking a look, at these different ones, if you flip them over, you'll see that they have a slick and a rough side. Oh. So just to give a little, just a tip, the more the surface that you carve away in this process, the more integrity your leather will lose, right? You're going to lose some strength, you're going to lose some structure. So just an overall tip as we dive in, to not dive too deep into the leather piece itself. You want to kind of skim the surface. And that's just because you want the piece to retain its integrity, and you don't want to actually carve a hole in your leather. So let's just do a little exploring on these pieces here. I have in front of me my gouge tool, and I like to hold this tool in the right in the dip of my palm, face out, for straight lines. So if I'm going to make a straight line, I kind of put my finger close to the end of the tool. The round part is inside my hand, and I'm just lightly gripping it with my thumb. And this is a good position if you want to just carve a straight line. Let's just take a look at what all these pieces look like with just a straight line carved. Do you see how they're different? This one is really exposing that flesh color through the top, right? There's a lot of oil in this particular hide. Over here, in this black one, let's see what it looks like carved away. This one has a gray inside, right? These are all just going to be slightly different. So that's what that looks like. This beautiful brown. When we carve this one away, this one carves really nicely. It's kind of a consistent color all the way through. And on our veg tan, see, this is why I love this craft, because this has some scarring on it, some imperfections, but this would still be a beautiful piece at the end with all the carving. And look how beautifully the veg tan carves. It's very smooth, has a really tight grain on top. So as you can see, these all take the carving a little bit differently. And as I mentioned, doing a straight cut is nice. pushing the tool away from yourself. I like to brace it from the back and push forward. It's not quite as easy. Just thinking ahead, we're going to go over design elements in a minute, but pushing forward is not as good with curves. It's a little bit rough to make those curves. It just doesn't cooperate quite as well. It's harder to follow a line. So how I like to do curves is actually flipping the tool around towards myself, which they always tell you not to do, but I find it's the best way to have control is to drag the tool slowly towards my body and to use the natural mechanics of.
Hey Liz,
Hey.
Your phone has done something.
Has done something.
Yeah, it's doing a screen broadcast now.
Interesting.
Oh, it's back.
Okay. Sorry about that. Interesting. Do I need to go back at all, Lindsay?
I think you are okay.
Okay, right on. Sorry about that, everyone.
It has done it again.
Why is it doing that? Apologies, everyone. Is there some kind of airplay going on? No. Thank you so much. Okay, so we covered kind of doing the straight lines by just pushing away from your body. It's a great way to achieve the straight line. This is if you're going to do a geometric pattern. If you're trying to go for an organic shape, like I said, turn the tool towards yourself. I know that's a no-no typically, but this is how I find I get the best curves. If I use the mechanics of my wrist to just kind of pull the tool towards myself, I get kind of a nicer curve. So go ahead and just try out your leather, see how it's behaving. And it's really great to practice before you dive in to your actual project. So I know if you don't have any spare leather around, it gets a little rough to practice, but I really encourage you because the more you practice doing curve lines and straight lines, the more warmed up your hand will be when you actually approach the piece you want to approach. Okay, so that's kind of line style. Another thing I wanted to touch on is how there is directional, it's kind of invisible, directional grain within the surface of your leather. So just because it's a natural material, just like if you were cutting a steak, there is grain within the leather. And on some parts of the hide, you're gonna have more resistance than others. So I actually can't really tell on this piece because it's such an even piece. You can tell a little bit here, there's a grain here in one direction, and then this is kind of more compact over here. So if I was to go against here, I'm gonna have more resistance because I'm going against these fibers than if I was gonna go this way, because it looks like this is kind of following a different grain. So just something to be aware of as you explore and get to know your tool a little bit. You will hit more resistance in some places than others. Another thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of talk design is how exactly you want your tool to behave within the hide. So to get a really nice beginning and ending, like you can see over here, I wasn't thinking too hard about it, so I got these little tags at the end. And that can happen, and those just come off, and I can show you how to treat those at the end. But to get a really nice cut that's consistent, you want to put the most pressure at the beginning. You're going to kind of take a bite into the leather, and then you're going to kind of angle the tool more parallel, right, to the piece of leather. And at the end, when you want to end your line, you want to kind of point the tool higher and push up. So you're going to take a bite at kind of a sharper angle. Once you're in the leather, you're going to flatten out your tool parallel, and then you're going to lift up at the end. And that's kind of how to get kind of a nice line. I know it sounds counterintuitive at this point, but actually going faster creates a nicer cut. Not that time, because this is live and it never happens perfectly, but going faster is actually a better way to get a good line. If you go too slow, your tool might get kind of caught up in there. So the more flow you have and the more familiar you get with your particular hide and your particular tool, kind of the better it will go. So these are just some leather styles. Yes.
Would this technique work with vegan leathers, like ones made from cork or cactus?
Yeah, or pineapple. I know pineapple leather is really great. That's a great question. I have not tried this on any vegan leather. But if you want to report back to me, if you've got it in front of you, I'd be so curious to hear how it's going. Yeah, we have a bag maker here in San Diego she makes bags out of pineapple leather, and they are beautiful, beautiful bags. Okay, so now that we've done a little bit of practice with different types of leather, and maybe you've gotten a little warmed up with the leather that you have in front of you, let's talk a little bit about planning the motif that you have on your particular project. So I'm going to use these in front of me here to kind of describe what I'm talking about. So on this particular wallet, I have this all over geometric motif. This was kind of achieved using, I'll just give a quick overview on how you can tape off portions to create something really geometric, right? So I'm just gonna tape off the end here, right? And then you would tape off again and carve between, remove the tape, you know, tape again to create really nice lines and just to give yourself that little space to carve into. I did slanting lines here and vertical lines, and I alternated. This is an overall pattern, right? It's covering the entire canvas before I went ahead and assembled the piece. Alternatively, you can do just a feature pattern, right? On this little card wallet here, we have this feature panel here, and I did not carve on the remainder of the piece. So this is something to just think about as you look at the piece in front of you. This is that wallet flattened, right? It goes like this. This is how it assembles. So before I carved this, I looked at one without carving and I said, I think I just want the motif right here in front. And so when I opened it up, I remembered which portion of the leather was revealed in that spot, and I just carved there. Similarly, over here, this is a really beautiful belt bag. I hope you can see this. This might be my favorite one I've ever carved, but the motif is just right here on the flap, right? It's not on the inside. It just trickles over the back here. I hope you can see it. And there's just one little featured palm on the back. Separately, this one has an all over motif, right? So I covered the entire piece. And this is what that project looks like flat, right? It assembles like this folds in, and this comes down. So it's a good idea to orient yourself with the particular pattern you're using, just to decide where you want that featured design, right? If you just want it on the top, right? Here's that panel that you would use. So I know that'll be custom to everyone in whatever project they have in front of them, but just something to think about before you dive in and plan where you want your design to be. Okay, so today I have this really large tote bag. This is a beautiful kit that we offer. So much real estate for carving, right? I have a finished bag down below, but I'm not even sure it would fit on the table. But as you can see, it's got these two panels. It comes with all these straps. It comes with different pockets, right? Like this is one that this is one that I carved earlier, just a geometric design. If you were going to do a pattern like this on a tote bag, you would want to decide where you want the motif. Going back to what I was talking about previously with the other totes, right? Like you could do the entire panel behind the pocket. And if so, that would give you this area to play because this will end up getting covered up and you wouldn't have to worry about doing warm up carving right here, right? So that's just another example of like, you could have all this real estate to carve, and it would just mean choosing that design where you want the design to be. So for example, here's a smaller version. This whole panel was carved flat, and it has an interior pocket, but this is all exposed, right? And then alternatively, on this side, I just chose to carve the pocket. So maybe this is overkill explanation, but I just want you to plan out your project so that you're really prepared and can visualize that final result, and also use any hidden spots within your pattern to hide any practice. Okay, so in terms of our design element, I think I want to teach you guys just this classic palm that's come up in so many of these projects, because a palm is the perfect motif to carve for the first time. It's great for beginners. Taking a look at this palm here, it's just a little version of a palm I have behind me that I got from my front yard. And just taking a look at the anatomy, right? It's got a stem and it has fronds that come off, and they're a little bit thinner at the bottom, thicker, and then they get thin again. And it might be a good idea to just grab a piece of paper if you wanted, and something inspirational, like, I'm just going to pull this book out because I love it. I don't know if anyone else has this book, but it's by Katie Scott. And she has some amazing illustrations inside. And her palms right here, they really give a good overview and just simple visual of how these palms will look when they're carved, right? They've got these curved lines and then some fronds coming off the top. And these are great simple lines to carve into leather for the first time. So when I think about my motif, I know that a palm frond has a lot of motion, right? And it's a little bit thicker. Ooh, that's maybe too thick. It's kind of thicker in the center. And then it has these little things that come off the side because the fronds are narrower towards the bottom, right? This is essentially what we're going to be carving. And then the fronds are either a single carve, right? Or a double carve. And I'll show you what this looks like on the leather, but there's a lot of motion in these leaves, right? Coming off the top.
We have a few questions, Liz.
Yeah, Lindsay, hit me.
So how far when carving leather do you suggest going down into the leather?
Oh gosh, barely at all. So you're basically just wanting to remove that top grain. So I can go into that a little bit. I can even bring the camera down for that in a minute. You're just wanting to remove that top grain and expose the flesh under it. So it's going to depend on the thickness of your leather, but you really just, you're trying to get that surface layer off. The deeper that you go in, the higher risk that you run of creating either a hole in your leather or even removing so much that when we go to oil and finish our leather at the end, it'll create a leak on the back of the leather. So you kind of want to be just midway into the depth of the leather at the most. I hope that helps.
After you're done with your sketch, could you show the book again?
Sure. Everyone should buy this book. Do you want just the cover? Do you guys want?
Yeah, I think they want to see the name and the author.
Yeah, Katie Scott. This is a poster book. So these are actually really nice, big illustrations inside. Look at that. I mean, you probably couldn't carve something quite this thick into leather, but in terms of the line inspiration, let me show you the palms again. So this is kind of what we're going for. And this shape as well. But obviously you guys have free reign to choose whatever you want to carve on your own piece. All right. Katie Scott. There she is. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. Okay, so now that I kind of have an idea of what I want to carve, I'm noticing, right, that I have this thick line here. This line is really thick. These lines are pretty thick. And then there's a thin line here. And what I know about my tools is that one is the U gouge, and he's going to remove a lot wider of a piece than the V gouge. This one's really narrow. So he's going to be perfect for that little stem part where the leaf connects to the where the frond connects to the stem. Now I know there's a lot of makers out there who they like patterns and structure. I tend to be a go with your gut kind of maker. But if you wanted to draw out your pattern and you really like your pattern, right? It's totally not a problem at all to tape this down. You can tape it onto your piece. You know, think about where you want to place it. And then take your pencil again and just go over the pattern. I'm not going to do this whole pattern, but I think you'll get the idea. It's actually going to create a little dimple in the leather where you can go in and carve later. It might be really hard for you to see on there, but there is a fine line, and I have a general guide. You could also use like a bone folder for that, or a ballpoint pen, but basically you're creating, you know, you're doing a pattern transfer. So you could draw the entire pattern if you wanted, or, you know, if you just like this one, you can flip it. You'll have the indent, and you can do another print over here, and you can kind of just place them wherever you want. If you want a really consistent pattern. All right, how's everyone tracking? Am I going too fast? Too slow?
I think you're good.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Let's see. Okay, so who's ready to do some carving? I know I am. So I think I'll carve on this guy here. This is our large leather wallet. The pattern is designed by Ellie Lam of Clum House, whom I love. And again, just as a refresher, you're going to want to look at your piece and see how it's assembled, right? So these flaps come in here, this, and these flaps come up like this. And this is just kind of a dry fit, right? Just so we can get a feel for what the leather will look like. So that's how it kind of goes. So I have this nice panel in the front here, and I have a nice little bit of canvas here, and also these little canvases inside. I think what I'm going to do is flip it over. So here is my two canvases, right? I think just to mark off where I want my pattern, I'm just going to do a piece of tape in the middle, because I know that that's the fold, right? I know that this is where the wallet closes. So I don't want any carving here, because any carving you do will weaken the leather slightly. All right. Now, I did mention I like to just go with my gut and carve. If you want to transfer your pattern on there, that's fine. I like to just go for it. And I'm actually going to use a scratch awl to kind of plan out where I'm going to carve. So I know that it's folded. Let me just reorient myself. Never hurts to check too much. Okay, so this is where it closes. That's where it snaps together ultimately. So I'm going to have a big frond that just comes down like this and ends there. Can you see? I hope you can see that on the camera. But I'm basically just planning my cuts. I'm going to do those little fronds out the front here, because I know that this area is going to get filled up with those fronds. So I'm just going to do these the little stems coming off. And I know that these scratches are going to get removed by the tool. So I'm not super worried about how precise they are. And I'll just have a little feature frond there. Now I do like a lot of asymmetry and movement. So I'm going to have another frond that's kind of peeking up, coming this direction, coming up from the side. I'm going to do the same thing here. This is your leather. So I know leather is valuable, but don't be too precious about it. Like, it's so durable. It can handle a lot of a beating, and it will still love you and have a lot of rigidity. So just put your scratches where you want them, or transfer your pattern. And then going back to how I like to hold the tool, I'm going to pierce. And here's where that question came in. So maybe I can even lower the camera a little more. So I have my tool, and here's my beginning of my scratch line. I hope you can see it. And I'm going to just take a bite, right? So I took a bite of the leather. You can see it inside my tool there. And as soon as I'm maybe just, getting a feel for it, maybe halfway into the leather, I'm going to pivot the tool so that it's more parallel to the surface of the leather. And I'm going to start to drag the tool, taking advantage of how the mechanics of my wrist, right? Start to drag the tool through. Not worrying too much about any little wobbly bits here. I hope, can you all see? Let me try something. If I turn this down.
That looks better, actually.
Yeah, it was a little blown out. Ha-ha! Okay. So I ended my line there, but my scratch line ends there. So I'm going to back up to where it was still as wide as my tool. And I'm just going to carve those sides down again a little bit. And then as soon as I get to the end of the scratch line, I'm going to lighten the pressure and pull out. So I didn't catch your name, but whoever answered the question or asked the question, that's about as deep as I'm going. Hopefully you can see that. And right here, as you can see, I lifted up and let go of pressure a little too much. So I'm actually going to go back and just do a very light carving to widen that out so it's more consistent. All right. Okay, so there's my first scratch, my first carved line, I guess. And then I'm going to take my slightly smaller tool. This is the V tool, and just getting it just nipped in to the edge of where the leather is raised, right? I'm kind of in the gully here that I've just created, and I'm going to very carefully just scratch a mark. Let's see. All right, there we go. Making these little scratches, right? Just pulling up when we're done, making the mark. We just lift pressure off and the tool comes right out of the leather. Let me grab. Let me grab this guy. Is anyone not doing a palm? I'm so curious to hear what you guys are choosing to carve. I think great designs for beginners are kind of single line, just line carvings. If you try to get two-dimensional, with them, you can end up losing so much material that you make a hole. And I'll show you a little bit about that towards the end. All right, you know what? I'm kind of going against the grain here, so it's a little bit of a challenge. Once you get in the motion and you're doing something repetitious, it does scratch out a little bit easier. Okay, so now that I have my little stems here, it's okay that they're not perfect. And even if you don't like where they ended, it's fine, because you're gonna go in and to create the fronds. And I'm actually gonna start about halfway down this line I created with the smaller V. So I'm actually gonna take a bite halfway into that piece, and I'm just gonna drag the tool just at an angle. Try to be you know, consistent pressure. Once you get in a rhythm, it's really, really easy. All right, here's a good tip too, because I just did it. If you find yourself, you went in too deep and suddenly it's really hard to push the tool, go ahead and pull the tool out. Don't try to force it through because you might end up making a hole. So just back out and then start again with a little less pressure. You don't want to commit to that. When you're feeling a lot of resistance, don't commit to that cut. It's okay to back out, surrender, and then start tracking through it again with a little less pressure.
We have a question from Sarah. If they have already done the leather crossbody workshop, can they still carve on an already made piece?
Ooh, the leather crossbody. Is it the belt bag? Was that Sarah? Is it this one, Sarah? Oh, okay.
The belt bag.
The belt bag. Okay. Okay. Here's what I would do, Sarah. Okay. So to see how this one's already built. And this is a slightly different hardware. This is just a kind of a custom one that I made, but I would open it like this. And you could definitely carve on anything you can get perfectly flat. So this is perfectly flat. I would even maybe put like an old book inside to create a very level surface. And you could definitely carve this portion. I wouldn't try doing this portion because there's so much dimensionality here. It might even become dangerous. Your tool is going to fly off because it's not very stable. But if you wanted to just carve, you know, this little bit here, I think that would be really, really lovely. Anything you can get flat and stabilized, you could definitely give it a try. I hope that helps. Okay. So, oh yeah, this side is definitely against the grain. It's just a little more stubborn. I'm going to speed up because I think you guys understand what I'm talking about. I love this because you can just kind of go crazy. Like once you have a flow, you can just carve and carve. And I promise with this motif, it's hard for it to look bad. It just looks really organic and natural. So as you can see, I've got my basic palm frond here. Sometimes I go a little bit further with this motif and I will actually go back in the other direction, right? I've turned my leather so that I'm still carving towards the inside of my wrist, and just create a second dimension. If you want, if you're feeling like your pattern has a lot of open space and you maybe want a little more dimension, you can carve a line that goes, you know, it kind of hugs. I don't know, it doesn't hug, but towards each other, right? Like a leaf. And it just gives it a little more body to each shape if you want. This is just a design choice. I probably won't even do it to the other side. This is just for an example. And you'll see what that does is it leaves a little raised area in the middle of the frond too, which is really fun. So just another option. If you really like this motif, you know, you can embellish it in different ways. And now for my little baby frond here, I actually am going to keep him feeling like he's further away. So this is kind of the feature frond. And here's the one, I think I want to keep him in the background. And that will add a little bit of depth to the piece. So I like how he's going in another direction. And I'm just going to carve him slightly lighter. And I'm going to have him kind of going into behind the one I just cut. But instead of giving him so much detail, I'm just going to do a simpler motif, and it kind of gives it the illusion that he's further back or behind. And like, feel free to play with depth. You can even just have, you know, you can even just have a single one coming up here if you want. But this is kind of the basic idea. Like if you want to do this motif, it's really that simple. you get in a groove and you can continue to remove, like if you want this, the beginning of this branch to be a little thicker, you can remove that. And let's check again. So when we close up this wallet, this is what the front of the wallet's going to look like. And I think that's really beautiful. It's just a feature that just enhances this beautiful leather already. So that's kind of an overview on how to carve. Again, like you can do something geometric like this. That's just straight lines. Like I showed you how to push for a straight line and then slightly angling. This is all just eyeball. It's really just mark making. And similar to this, this is just a lot of motion. And it's just, I don't know, kind of reminds me of maybe a cat fight, a cat scratches. But it's just a beautiful, you know, you kind of just, it's mindless. You get into emotion, and it's a big stress reliever. Let's see what else, just to give you some ideas. Here's the same concept. This is with the little V tool. This one is with the U gouge, a little bit bigger. When you have finished your motif, let's say you want to cover this entire thing, go ahead and remove any tape. I'm just going to show you how to finish up treating this type of leather. So, you know, I'm going to consider this done. I think it's beautiful. I would definitely gift this to somebody as is. And how I would finish this before I built it, because you want to keep it flat if you're going to treat it at all. But I just get some olive oil. And there's two ways you can approach this. You can approach it by getting a lot of olive oil on there and digging into your cuts and making sure that the oil gets into that suede down there. This olive oil will just treat it a little bit, condition it, give it a little bit of weatherproofing. Or you can do something kind of fun if you like a little bit higher contrast. You definitely don't want to put the oil directly on the leather. You want to dab the rag into the olive oil, and instead of like really grinding it into this design, you can just pass it over lightly. And what that does is it creates a bit more contrast. I'm not really encouraging the oil to go into the cuts, and it just gives it this contrast. Now, every time I do this, it looks so blotchy and bad, right? Like, look at the oil. If you are kind of like me and you go, oh man, that looks terrible, just wait. Honestly, just wait a little while. This will even out and look really beautiful. So if you wanted to give it a light pass, then your motif will stay lighter, right? It'll just have more contrast. If you wanted to get the oil in there, you can really get the oil in there and it will darken it. If you had leather dye, oh man, you could apply leather dye at this point to really get some color on there. And the beautiful thing is that leather dye will drink up into your cuts, but not drink as easily into the grain. So your motif will be a lot darker. So this is how this is how I finish it. You could pretend this whole thing was cut. And this just gives it a beautiful color and a little bit of weatherproofing. It also makes the leather a little bit more pliable for when you want to fold it into its final shape for rivets and everything. So yeah, you could also use, if you have mink oil, this is a great product. Golden mink oil is great for conditioning leather. This is a really fun brand made in the United States, made in Maine. Any kind of leather conditioner is just going to get your leather really soft and help it cooperate with what shape you want it to be ultimately, because it can resist you. Leather is very sturdy. Okay, so that's just a little demonstration of how to make that particular motif. There are so many directions you can go with this, right? Like, oh man, see how it doesn't like to cooperate. But that would make just a really pretty wallet, just really custom. You know, this is what it ends up looking like. It's that final shape. There are so many things you can carve with leather. I just want to show off these. This is that palm motif on a pair of sandals that I made. These aren't quite finished, but you know, just like how fun, because these sandals would be lovely, but adding that little design element just makes them feel so much more special. Let's see, any questions? There's one final thing I want to try alongside you guys because I've never tried it before, but it's fun to explore. But are there any questions right now?
Let's see, we just got one from Anne. Would it help to moisten leather before carving?
Yeah, absolutely. Leather is a lot easier to cut when it's wet. A lot of people will actually soak their leather before carving. And that's a really great idea. I do wonder, I've never tried it particularly. If as it dries, it would shrink differently than if it was whole, if that makes sense. So if you would get any kind of puckering or warping of the leather if it dried like that. But that's a great question. I don't know if I could point this out on the sandals here. You definitely have to soak this outsole or the bottom leather to be able to cut it at all because it is so sturdy. Okay, I want to do an experiment just to speed up some time. If you guys don't have questions, I've never tried this before, but I've always wanted to. So I have this brayer and I have some leather paint and I just want to see what would happen if because this is all about exploring, right? Candace is nodding at me, so I'm just gonna try it. And if it's a fail, hey, it's real life. So I've got a little, this is, I think Angelus. Yeah, Angelus leather paint. And I've got some parchment and a brayer. I don't know, this could be a disaster, but it's all about vulnerability. Oh, is this turning at all? Aha, there we go. Not really. I'm gonna try it anyway. So I bet if I pass this, oh, nope. It would rotate. Well, I think you understand what I'm saying, right? Maybe there we go a little bit. So the cool thing about brayers, again, is that's a backup for me. Play is fun. So I think you understand the concept, right? If you had a brayer that worked, this is an old one, and leather paint, you're actually creating a relief. So here's the concept. I mean, that's pretty rad. So the paint's only going to skim the surface, right? Just at that depth. So something to play with. I'll continue to play with that. Maybe if you guys like that idea too, and have a brayer that rolls. I'd love to see what you make. Yeah, I think that could be really cool. All right. So are there any final questions? Does anyone want to see any more carving? I have a lot of leather here. Happily, it's a good day. Lots of leather.
We have a few questions that have come in.
Yeah.
So if you were to soak the leather, would it be in water or oil?
Oh, definitely water. So there's a really fun technique called wet forming. And a lot of people will do this anytime they're trying to encourage leather into a final shape, right? Get it used to its new identity. They will soak in water. So you could definitely soak this in water. And then actually just fold it into the shape you want. Again, I just love this one and I get to know each other. And then I would put some parchment in a book. So this is the final shape we want, right? I would put some parchment in book and just let it sit overnight. And it's actually going to really flatten it into that shape and it will stay in that shape, probably even without rivets. I mean, obviously you want to add rivets, but definitely water. And then after it's in its final shape and dried, and you've done your carving or your painting, you condition it with oil at the very, very end.
And we have some very positive comments about the paint. They liked your experiment. And another question we have is, could you theoretically paint or leather dye first before carving, or should you carve first?
I would carve first, especially if it's veg tan. Veg tan is endlessly customizable. You definitely want to carve first and then add any paint, and absolutely condition at the very, very end. So the paint can actually not stick to the leather if there's any kind of oil on there. It will just kind of, it will not bond. Pretty much anything bonds really well with veg tan. So if you're going to do any type of painting, I would carve, then paint, then oil. If that makes sense.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that is the end of our questions. So I'll go ahead and flip it to your front camera.
All right, you can see the big mess I made. It's only fun if it's messy. That's kind of my rule. So yeah, I hope everyone had fun. Again, if you have leather of any type, even if you just have scraps and you want to make a bunch of key fobs, you know, just do some mark making in it. Even key fobs, just practice. I can't tell you how many times I've made a beautiful leather bag and it looks amazing. And I walk around and I'm hoping everyone will notice it, but they don't, because it just looks like any other nice leather bag. But then you add something custom to it, you add paint to it, you add carving, and people they just love it and they don't know where they can get it. And then you get to brag about how you made it. It's really, really the best. So anyway, I'm so glad you all joined. And on behalf of myself and everyone at the Crafters Box, Candace, who is here, hot on getting me the right brayer. It didn't work out, but I really appreciate all your kind comments about the paint. Try it out. Let me know how it goes. On behalf of Candace and I and everyone at the Crafters Box, thank you for joining. I'd like to thank Lindsay and Michaels, and hopefully we get to see you again. And I want to see your projects. So send it to the Crafters Box hashtag so that we can all check it out and see what you make.
Yeah, and do hashtag make it with Michaels as well, so we can
awesome.
See that. All right, thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.